Hey, what's up there, YouTubers? It's me again, Brian, aka Gamer55551, and I am back with a video review. And for this review, we're going to be taking a look at Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, for the Nintendo Switch. The game is also available on the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC via Steam, but we'll be focusing on the Nintendo Switch version though. And if you're interested in any gameplay footage of me playing Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, I'll have a link down in the description down below, or you could click on the card that will appear up on this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And for any parents out there, it's worth pointing out that Crash Bandicoot 4 is rated E10 for ages 10 and up by the ESRB though. Crash Bandicoot is a character I remember during the late 90s when the PlayStation sort of entered into the business. The character basically was sort of like a alternative to Mario and all that stuff, and I've seen ads where some guy dressed up as Crash Bandicoot was calling out Mario with like a microphone and all. But anyway, the game that was developed by Naughty Dog though, that developed 3 Crash games on the original PlayStation, until the franchise went into hands of different developers. It went to developers here or there, while Naughty Dog, the original folks who worked on the Crash series, would be bought up by Sony and all. And for most part, Crash has sort of kind of remained dormant here and there until like around, I think in 2017 or so forth, when they released Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, which was basically the collection of the first 3 Crash games for the original PlayStation. It would be released on the PS4, I believe 2017, but I'm not 100% sure. That would follow up with the release being put on other systems like the Xbox One, the Nintendo Switch, and of course PC. So it was kind of interesting to hear Activision, who now owns the rights to Crash and all, basically announced last year and released Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time, which is kind of interesting for a company that seems squarely focused on Call of Duty as their real moneymaker, to be exact. But in either way, the game did get some good reviews and all, and that supposedly it did very well. And it also followed up with the release of it, bringing it to the Nintendo Switch and to other platforms as well. So, and after spending some time with the Switch version, I honestly will say that while it may not be on the same level as, say, like the PS5 or the Xbox Series X and S or the PC version though, Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time on the Nintendo Switch is still a good game, especially if the Switch is your main system and all. So why don't we get started with the pros and cons, and we'll start off first with the pros, and that is in terms of how the game runs on the Nintendo Switch. It runs very well and all that stuff. The visuals of the game do look nice. They have the cartoony looks and all that stuff, and it does run at a 30 frames per second though. Now, granted, it's not going to look nearly as good as, say, like I mentioned, like what's on the PS5 or what's on the Xbox Series X and S, or what's going to be on like the PC, which those versions have higher resolution and obviously running at 60 frames per second though. But I will say I'm not disappointed with the Switch version, as it runs very well though. It may not be the version for everyone though, but it runs fine though. It's not really a graphically demanding game the way excuse me, the way Doom Eternal, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, or Witcher 3 Wild Hunt would be. So as far as if you're worried about it, that you're getting like a terrible version on the Nintendo Switch, no, it's going to run fine on the Nintendo Switch, just as long as you're fully aware you're not getting one that runs at 60 frames per second or basically has a higher resolution. The next thing I do want to talk about is one of the features I liked in the game is that they have the use of the mask though. Now, past Crash Bandicoot games, or at least the ones that I've played, basically the mask acts as sort of like your life bar in a way though. In the game though, it's sort of like a one-hit kill, so you have to be careful basically where you land Crash or Coco or any of the other characters though. But what's interesting is that there are other masks in the game that do change up the gameplay a little bit. Some masks, like one example, would give you let your character spin for a long time, which can come in handy in terms of knocking out certain enemies, to maybe clearing certain jumps that might be difficult for Crash and Coco. Others may be like there are certain blocks that are like invisible, and you sort of have to switch between, switch between different blocks to even different platforms and all. So it's a really neat mechanic that they added into Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time, and I like the idea of the use of the max and all that stuff. Then last but not least, I do want to talk about is the gameplay. And I will say there is some minor adjustments here and there with the gameplay in Crash Bandicoot 4, though. While the structure of the game does follow similar to what Insane Trilogy is, I feel it feels a little bit different. I don't feel the controls are tight, though. They're certainly just feels comfortable, the control of Crash and Coco and all, to basically the way in terms of landing your jumps, though. So now every time your character jumps, there's sort of like a green circle at the bottom, which can come in real handy if you're trying to land your character after making a certain jump. This could kind of come in handy, though, especially with the way the camera is kind of panned in this game, where there are some parts that will go into a 2D perspective, but it will go into a limited 3D perspective, like sort of your character behind you, which can make platforming a bit tricky every now and then, though. But it is a nice welcome feature and all. Other features they've added, though, is now you have the ability to play it in sort of in a casual mode or in the regular mode, where this one you do have unlimited lives, where the other version you do have a set of lives and all that stuff. So it's nice that they added this mode to make it easier for those who might have struggled with maybe Insane Trilogy and all that stuff. So some nice improvement here and there to the gameplay mechanics in Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time, though. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we'll get to part 2, which is the cons. So we'll take a little break, and we will be right back. Okay, and we are back with part 2 of my video review of Crash Bandicoot 4. It's about time for the Nintendo Switch, and of course, as I mentioned before, the game's also on PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PC via Steam. So now that I gave you the pros, why don't we get started with the cons? And there are really only 2 cons I can think of at the same time, though. And we'll start with the first one with is the gameplay, though. Now, as I mentioned before, they made some improvements here and there to the gameplay in Crash Bandicoot 4, which isn't definitely a bad thing or anything like that. And the game is still enjoyable. Don't get me wrong about that. At the same time, though, there can be moments of frustration in this game, though, and there have been several times I've run into that, particularly dying a lot, though. Some of it is sort of the one-hit death that they have in the game, though, which means that unless you have one of the masks that acts as sort of like a hit point for your character, though, you'll pretty much die. You'll pretty much die a lot in this game, though. Other issues is sort of the platforming, as well, as there are some cases where the game requires you to break a whole lot of boxes, which is fine and all, but there are times when you have to sort of cross like a long cavern, like there's like a giant, like a pit, and you sort of have to hit every box while you make your way across, and if you miss one or miss the timing, it can be frustrating to go back to the beginning and all. So there are frustrating moments in the game, though, that I have run into. Does it make the game unplayable or anything like that? No, it's just that like I said, they're just frustrated moments, though. So it might turn some people off, though. Luckily, though, if you play the game on casual mode, though, you'll have like unlimited lives, and you could try again if you're having sort of a hard time with it. So that sort of is a good thing in a way, though. And last thing but not least, though, is sort of like regardless of which character you play between Crash or Coco, there's really nothing different between the 2 characters, though. The only real difference is sort of their animations and all, but other than that, that's it. The only character I've seen so far that's different is Crash's old girlfriend. I believe her name is Tawan, T-A-W-A-N, who she has sort of like a grappling hook, which can be used across certain, reach to certain areas, to maybe hitting certain enemies from a distance and all. But other than that, though, other than some of the characters here and there, The difference between Crash and Coco aren't really different, though. I mean, it's not bad, though. I mean, you might, like I said, you'll see maybe a difference in the animation in some of the characters, but that's pretty much it, or anything like that. Their move sets are pretty much, for the most part, just the same. So nothing really different between Crash and Coco, though. This one is sort of a minor con, nothing really huge or anything like that. Overall, Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time on the Nintendo Switch is a fun 3D platform, though. They do make some improvement to the gameplay, which is good, though, for those who might have been maybe frustrated with Insane Trilogy to a certain extent, though. I do like the fact that they used different maps in the game, which does add a little bit to the gameplay, though. And the game does run very well on the Nintendo Switch, though. Granted, it's not going to look anywhere near what the PS5 or the Xbox Series X and S or even the PC is, though. But this isn't really a graphically demanding game, though. So it's not, like I said, it's not on the same level as like Doom would be, like how that was on the Nintendo Switch, where you could spot the difference right here, though. I mean, so it may not look as good as those versions. It may not run at 60 frames per second, but it runs very well at 30 frames per second, though. And the visuals of the game look nice, even on the Nintendo Switch, though. The gameplay obviously is going to be frustrating for some folks, though. Yes, they made some improvement to the gameplay, but there are times when I felt where I had to die a lot. Some of that is because of the one-hit kills, which can lead to some frustrated moments, though. And as I mentioned before, this is a minor con. There's really nothing different between Crash or Coco or anything like that. But in either way, Crash Bandicoot 4 is a fun game, nevertheless, on the Nintendo Switch, though. It's worth picking up if you're a fan of platforming games, though. As far as which version to pick up, again, it doesn't really matter which version you were willing to pick up. It depends on really two factors, though, for me, though. One is how big of a factor do you view portability, and the other factor is, are you willing to accept the fact that the Switch version will run at 30 frames per second compared to like the PS5, Xbox Series S or X, or PC, which will probably more likely run at 60 frames per second and have a better resolution, though. If you're okay with it running at 30 frames per second and okay with how the game looks on the Nintendo Switch, pick up the Switch version. If you prefer the best looking version and have to have that 60 frames per second, then I would say go with the PS5 or Xbox Series S and X, or the PC version in general. But in either way, Crash 4, I think it's a fun game. It's a good 3D platform. It's not going to overtake Mario, but it's still an enjoyable game nevertheless. I hope that a Crash 5 does happen. That would be great if they do a Crash 5, though. Although it is Activision, though. We're lucky that we got a game where they didn't put heavy monetization into it or anything like that, though. Surprised that they have skins in the game where you actually can unlock it and not have to actually pay for it, which is pretty amazing considering we're talking about Activision here, to be exact. So, but either way, here's to hoping a Crash 5 does happen, and if it does happen, though, I wouldn't mind seeing this one come to the Nintendo Switch if there were any plans for that. But in either way, I enjoyed Crash Bandicoot 4. It's About Time. Okay, this concludes this video review of Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time on the Nintendo Switch. And again, these are my opinion. What are yours? What are your thoughts about Crash Bandicoot 4 It's About Time? Do you think it's a good platforming game? Are you glad that Activision allowed this game to happen, especially for a company that focuses heavily on monetization and Call of Duty, though? Did you get the Nintendo Switch version? And if you got the Switch version, do you think it runs well on the Nintendo Switch, or do you prefer the other versions instead? Do you agree with what I said in this video? Do you disagree? Do you have a difference of opinion? As always, sound off in the comment section below. Let me know what you think. And if you do like this video, I hope you hit the like button. I would appreciate it. And I hope you do subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you do, make sure you hit the bell icon for notifications of any new videos I put up. Also, feel free to share this video if you want to, and feel free to donate to my channel if you like. You can do it through PayPal me or Patreon. Links will be in the description of this video, assuming you're watching this on YouTube. And I will see you again next time when I do another video. Hopefully that'll be soon. Until then, from Southern California, I wish you all a good day then. Bye!